Good evening and welcome to a regular Oak Harbor City Council meeting. It is the evening of May 21st. It is 6 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order and invite you to stand and join us in an invocation tonight led by Pastor Matt Waite from the First Reformed Church, and we will follow that with the Pledge of Allegiance, which I will lead.
Let's pray. Dear God, thank you for all of the many blessings that you bring us. Thank you for life. Thank you for the measure of health that you give us to fulfill our callings, for your provision, for friendship in general. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. Thanks for the freedom to embrace you or the freedom to reject you. Thank you for loving us even so from your boundless and gracious nature. In your word, you have said that citizens ought to obey the governing authorities, since you have established those very authorities to promote peace and order and justice. Therefore, I pray for our mayor, for the various levels of city officials, and in particular for this assembled council. I am asking that you would graciously grant them wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our times, a sense of the welfare and true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and rightness, confidence in what is good and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement, personal peace in their lives and joy in their task. I pray for the agenda set before them today. Please give an assurance of what would please you and what would benefit those who live and work in and around our beloved city of Oak Harbor. It is in your blessed name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think we have one of our council members that is absent tonight, Councilor Wassinger. I would entertain a motion to excuse Councilor Wassinger. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
I move we excuse Councilman Wassinger. Second.
Okay, motion to excuse Councilor Wassinger, motion by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Councilor Servadius. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That passes unanimously, so I would invite you to approve the agenda at this time, or if anybody's got any changes suggested. Seeing none, I guess we'll move ahead with the agenda as presented. Let's go on to our item number 2, which is presentations. And tonight, under community presentations, we have a presentation from Civility First, and I think we've got a couple of folks with us this evening. Sandy Peterson, Gary Ray, welcome.
Thank you so much. My name is Sandy Peterson. I'm the vice president of an organization called Civility First ... so that we can work together. This group was formed a few years back when a group of concerned citizens, including this council's very own Jim Campbell, joined together because they were very concerned and wanted to stem the normalization of uncivil discourse in our county and in our country. To that end, we have been quite active in the community, and in October we did what was called Civility Month in conjunction with the Snow Isle Libraries. During that month we held workshops for adults and children and talked to through the libraries and local churches, teaching people how to disagree agreeably. 2 other cities, Langley and Coopville, have joined with Oak Harbor to become Civility cities. And we went together here tonight with you to present that plaque to you, and I'm going to have Gary Ray read to you what it says.
This is the plaque. It says, Oak Harbor, Washington, a Civility First city. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic chords of memory will swell when again touched, as surely they will be, by the better angels of our nature. That's a quote from Abraham Lincoln. The Civility First Pledge, which the city did do, the city of Oak Harbor aspires to value honesty and goodwill while striving to solve problems, attempt genuinely to understand the point of view of others, model civil behavior and tone online as well as in public by being kind while maintaining the right to vigorously disagree. That's important. We can disagree, but be civil. Acting respectfully towards each other, including opponents. Listening to those who disagree with us as well as supporters. Make only accurate statements when defending a position. Refraining from characterizing adversities as evil. Challenge disrespectful behavior courteously. Encourage any person or organization working on our behalf to meet these same standards for civil discourse. Renew our efforts if we fail to forgive others if they fail. The City of Oak Harbor hereby affirms the principles of the Civility First Pledge and admits to encourage and promote civility within their municipality and to cultivate a culture of civility among city employees and with the public they serve. Signed by the Mayor, Bob Severns, the President of Civility First, Kathy Whitmire, and I think all the City Council took the pledge. Right? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I would also like to let people know, some of you were handed, all the council received a yellow sheet of paper with the pledge and a little sticker you can put on your computer, so when you're sitting there, it can help you remember to maybe think about it before you push go. And for those of you who did not receive those when you came in, we do have the pledge and some more stickers as you're leaving this evening. And if you're more interested in our organization, it is civilityfirst.org. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lovely, thank you.
Okay, we will move on to section 3 of our agenda at this time. This is citizen comment period. Citizens may comment on subjects of interest not listed on the agenda or items listed on the consent agenda. To ensure comments are properly recorded, please state your name clearly into the microphone. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes to ensure all citizens have sufficient time to speak. So it is now a citizen comment period. Anybody wishing to comment at this time? Not seeing a rush to the microphone, so okay. We will move on to our consent agenda, and I think we have consent agenda items A through I. So unless somebody would like to pull one of those items, we will consider the consent agenda approved as presented. Seeing no, okay, we'll move on to item number 5. At this time, mayor comments. I do have a couple of announcements here. I think last meeting I mentioned a few days that we used to do actually a few more proclamations. We're trying to notify or trying to announce certain special times for our many of our employees and that are affected. For instance, May 4th was National Firefighter Day. The week of May 5 through 11 was National Public Service Recognition Week. That includes federal, state, and local government employees. Also, May 5 through 11 was National Corrections Officer Week. And then National Police Week was May 12 through 18. So with that, that concludes my comments, and I will turn to the council at this time. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I was privileged through my membership on Island Thrift Board to be invited to a special program that combined our elementary school music programs with the Saratoga Orchestra Symphony. And it was wonderful. If you look at the pictures, it was a way of bringing life through music to the kids. They have been practicing for, I'm sure, weeks and weeks, how to play their recorder, but also to sing special songs. But symphony itself would show them what the brass was and what the wind instruments were and the percussion, and to see their faces light up that they were really playing with a real orchestra. It brought such life and pride to me for helping to be one of the sponsors. Island Thrift, Oak Harbor School District, Oak Harbor Education Foundation, Tulalip Tribes Charitable Giving, Officer Spouse Group Club from NAS, Carnegie Hall's Well Music Institute for Educational Programs. It was marvelous. It's too bad their parents couldn't be there to see them, but I mean, kids, all shapes and sizes, some a little squirrely, but by the end, they were fully enthralled in this. And you've never heard so many recorders tweaking throughout. I mean, it's not just there, it's the whole stands were filled with children from all the elementary schools in the music program. It was fabulous. And I just wanted to give a shout out for such a good program and a combination of partnership in our community. And this is who's going to be running our city and volunteering and taking care of me when I am really, really old. So I just wanted to say thank you and bring attention to this wonderful program. So if you have a chance to give to any of these charitable groups or to participate, I hope you will, because it is well worth the investment. Thank you.
Well done, Mayor Pro Tem. Yes, Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. On the consent agenda tonight, we did have Cynthia Mason's appointment to the Arts Commission. Cynthia's in the audience. I just wanted to
Yes.
recognize her for being here, and thank you for all
Great
your
job.
volunteer work in the community. And I did want to comment on the audience tonight. I certainly appreciate you guys being here. I mean, so many nights we sit here and you know, there's nobody in the audience, and it seems like sometimes nobody cares. And your attendance tonight, for whatever the reason may be, we certainly appreciate that. Thank you.
Other council comments? Okay, we will move on then to city administrator comments.
All right, I just want to call your attention to the upcoming important city council dates. So be sure to keep those. We try to keep 2 months ahead here, so you know all the dates to have. And we're going into the summer season where we kind of move around some of the council items, our dates, and do some consolidation of meetings in the summertime. So, and we do have the grand opening on the 29th for the Windjammer Park, so real exciting there in June. Moving on, I do have a detailed report I'll present tomorrow at the workshop, so certainly you can have a lot of questions on that tomorrow. So that concludes my report today.
Thank you, Blaine. So with that, we'll move on to section 6 of our agenda, public hearings and meetings. We have a couple of ordinances, a resolution, a contract to discuss, a couple of contracts. During this time, if you would like to speak during the scheduled public hearing or meeting, please sign in, but if you don't, you'll still be given an opportunity to speak. And to ensure comments are recorded properly, please state your name into the microphone at that time, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes to ensure all have sufficient time to speak. So we'll start with ordinance number 1874, Critical Areas Code Amendments, and we have one of our senior planners here, Mr. Lefebvre.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Staff hopes this is the finish line for this ordinance. It's been a long ordeal, but I think it's been a fruitful ordeal. I'll keep my comments fairly brief. Just as a process summary, back in August, we had the first public hearing for this ordinance. We received some public comments, which we were given direction to take a closer look at, investigate, and see if we can incorporate those into an amended code. We came back to you in February at your workshop, discussed these proposed changes, and you gave us direction to move forward with amending the code. We took this forward to the Planning Commission at their March and April meetings, and also to you at your workshop last month, and we presented a proposed ordinance at that time, and we moved forward with the public hearing for this evening. The summary of the amendments, and this is going to be a real broad brush, we're looking at amending our Chapter 2012, which is our general critical area regulations, to incorporate a new section that deals with innovative development design. We are looking at amending our Chapter 20.24, which is our wetlands chapter, to deal with regional benefits of wetlands, changing our target category buffers, and also reinserting preservation as a form of mitigation. The proposed ordinance, which is in your packet, is slightly incorrect, and I apologize for that. There's a corrected version of the ordinance at your seat. As we were looking at the last ordinance in your packet, we noticed that there were 2 areas that needed to be corrected. We did discuss these changes at your April meeting, so they're nothing new to you. The changes are highlighted in the corrected ordinance. On page 2 is basically a change in terminology, which we discussed. And then on page 7, highlighted in yellow also, is some additional amendments that we're proposing to reflect the Department of Ecology's comments. So I apologize for that little wrinkle. Hopefully that won't derail this process, but we'll see, and we'll certainly act upon your direction. As is typical with any code amendment, we need to go through a variety of different steps. We did a SEPA on this project. We issued a determination of non-significance. We received no comments. We sent the notice of intent to adopt development regulations to the Department of Commerce. And we also received comments back from the Department of Ecology, which we also discussed at your April workshop. They have been incorporated. We noticed the Planning Commission public hearing at their April meeting, and they recommended unanimously approval to this body. And of course, then tonight is the City Council public hearing. So what staff is asking you to do tonight is conduct a public hearing, take public testimony, close the public hearing, and if you're comfortable with the corrected version of the ordinance, we recommend that you move to adopt. And with that, I'll step aside and be ready for any questions you might have.
Okay, so at this time, we'll open that public hearing and see if anyone would like to speak to that. Now is the time. Not seeing any. We'll invite Mr. Lefebvre back and turn it to the council. Any input or questions or motions or? Yes, Councilor Allenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Lefebvre, yes, there is a bit of a surprise here on page 7 with the highlight in the yellow. And I'd like for you, if you would please, to be more specific. A buffer shall be based on the expected or target category. What does that mean in your words specifically?
In my words, what that means is if there's mitigation required and that raises the category of that wetland, if the values and the functions of that wetland are increased or enhanced by that mitigation, then we had in code that the buffer would also be enlarged in conformance with that higher category of wetland. This states that if there's a study that is done that proves that the functions and values are maintained by that smaller buffer, then we're good to go.
Well, that is a bit inconsistent with the section that was crossed out where it says buffers may be maintained at a lower category buffer width if a critical area report from a qualified wetland professional shows wetland function and values are supported by lower category buffers with regardless, that's buffer widths, regardless of the target category of the proposed mitigation site. So that's what we read the first time. That's what we discussed in our workshop. And in the language that you're proposing now seems almost the opposite to me.
Well, that was the wording that was in code. We are removing that.
What wording?
The cross-out version.
Yeah,
That is being deleted. The new terminology is in the highlight yellow, and that's based on DOE recommendations.
That's what I was going to ask you next, is
Yeah.
why?
Yeah.
We're required to do that because it is way different than what we had before.
Well, it's still based on a case-by-case basis, and it's still based on whether those functions and values are proven by a qualified biologist. That's what we would require in-house to do that case-by-case analysis.
I don't know about the rest of the council, but this one bothers me the way it is, because my understanding was that's what this flexibility was about.
Well, that's the terminology we received back from Department of Ecology, so we're
So they
using
made
their
the
guidance.
correction and told us this is what we have to do.
Yes.
And if we don't do that, what happens?
Well, if we try to utilize the situation that we have in code, they might
Here comes Steve Powers to the rescue.
to the rescue.
Well, Mr. Almer, we appreciate your diligence in reviewing this, but the fact of the matter is that all buffers are going to be determined through a critical areas report. And so I don't want to tell you that this is just semantics, but it is very close to being just semantics, sir. Because when we get a mitigation report, critical area report associated with a wetland, it's going to tell us what buffer they believe that they can utilize in the project. I've never experienced a wetland biologist who tells us to provide a greater buffer than what they could reasonably have in order to meet the functions and values that ecology does. So I think I understand what you're saying, and I'm really convinced that this language is addressing your concern, because it has that clause, or put the darn glasses back on, or the buffer can be determined on a case-by-case. That's the flexibility that we wanted to be sure that we had in this code, the case-by-case. And so again, back to our basic way of talking about this, when we look especially at ecology's language, there's the prescriptive way to do things. Do this, you're good to go. What we were doing at the council's direction was to look for flexibility, and that flexibility comes by that case-by-case analysis. So if as a developer you don't want to fill around with that site-specific study, you do the prescriptive model and you can do it. If on the other hand you think there's a better answer, your wetland biologist can support that through the critical areas report. This language gives us the flexibility to consider that as part of the approval process.
I appreciate and respect your explanation. I think I'll just pass and wait to hear from the rest of the council.
Fair enough.
Thanks, Mr. Powers and Mr. LaFever.
Councilor Zervades.
Thank you. I was trying to find the packet from April. What was the language that we reviewed at the workshop?
What is in the corrected version, the two areas?
In the written corrected version?
In the ordinance
Physical.
that was at your seat,
Okay,
yes.
not the electronic version.
Yep.
And when did we get the wording from DOE?
Prior to the workshop in April.
And so it just wasn't updated in the packet?
Yeah, there was just an error in staff.
I mean, I concur with Mr. Almberg here that I don't see anything that would, I appreciate the case by case, those words, but I think I like a lot more, shall be maintained at a lower category buffer. Does that not give an applicant or someone more flexibility? Those
Well,
words?
I think as Mr. Powers indicated, we still have that flexibility with case-by-case basis.
One way says we're going to keep it at the lower buffer, or the lower category if they can provide.
You know, again, we regret the fact that our electronic packet had the mistake in it, but we did review this language with the council at the April workshop. I think I'm safe in saying to a person, you didn't have any questions about it and you were comfortable with that language at that time. And so the fact that we've made the mistake, I'm afraid, is what's caused these questions to come up again. That's one part of the answer. The other part of the answer, I think, is that we are obligated to listen to ecology to a very high degree. The third part of the answer, I think, which we've tried to convey to you for the life of this project, is that there are very few wetlands that we actually deal with in Oak Harbor.
The vast majority of wetlands within our urban growth area already have development around them. And so we're crafting a code which actually covers way more circumstances than we have experienced in my 20 years of being associated with the city. I can't tell you this piece will never ever apply, I wouldn't do that. But I can tell you that we're spending a lot of energy on certain situations which just do not come up that frequently in the development review process. And this language gives us the flexibility to allow the developer to do something unique if they can demonstrate to us that it will meet those functions and values, which again is what they do with every critical area report that we get.
Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two things, but one is minor, where it says determined on a case-by-case. We're missing a word. I think basis should be in there just to fix that up and clean it up, because it should be reading a case-by-case basis.
That's correct.
Okay, and then the other thing is, as this whole ordinance is presented, I believe it does provide flexibility, and not only does it maintain, but it even enhances the protections for our critical areas. I like particularly in section 1 where it says the innovative development design will achieve protection equivalent to or better than the treatment of the functions and values of the critical areas that would be obtained by applying the standard prescriptive measures contained in this title. So it gives us some enhancement of our protection. It gives us the flexibility that so many people are looking for. And in respect to both of those benefits, I'm going to support this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dennis, too, for the explanation. I don't have any problem with that language change, and I do think it was something that we discussed back in April. I think the fact that they can be determined on a case-by-case basis certainly gives more lateral movement than prescribing just one directive action, which the old language basically said, you may do this and that's it, versus being able to move on a case-by-case basis. I did want to comment, especially for those people out there who are watching at home or sitting here tonight, that originally we had kind of passed this ordinance as a hard pill to swallow. We were up against several deadlines. In fact, we had exceeded deadlines in order for this update. And fortunately, what happened is staff did exactly what we asked them to do, which was to take that hard pill to swallow, work on it a little bit more, make it more flexible, and give the citizens of Oak Harbor who were going to be affected by the ordinance a way to a solution rather than just a dead-end street. And I think staff did a great job. Too bad we didn't have the language right in our packet, and I'm sure the next one will get right. But I do appreciate staff's work on this. We took an ordinance that we had to swallow, and then we've made it better. We've given the flexibility that needs to be there so that we have solutions instead of dead ends, like I said before. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councilor.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I also want to be sure to thank the staff for all their work, but also to thank Mr. Bill Shields for coming and giving us a testimony that there are other ways to look at it. And sometimes we put blinders on and we just go down the road. And it's nice to have someone come in, blow a little bit of fresh air. I think it also not expanded, but gave you some relief that we could add some other flexibility. So I'm really, really happy that you guys went to work and looked at it, and I'm thankful to Mr. Shields for coming and throwing out some other ideas. So thank you, staff, very, very much. I know it's long and arduous. And with that, any more comments? I move to adopt ordinance number 1874, amending the Oak Harbor Municipal Code, Chapter 20.12, General Critical Areas Regulations, and Chapter 20.24, Wetlands.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second, exactly like it reads as it was recommended. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Munns, second by Councilor Larson. Any other input or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously.
Thank you,
for
Counselor.
that and those questions, and thank you, staff. We will move on to 7B at this time, ordinance number 1878, amending OHMC section 6.12.130, city parks. And we have our police chief, Dresker, coming before us. Chief, welcome.
Mayor, council members, thank you. So I'm going to read the background summary information, then the recommended action. So as you've seen the packet, in order to more effectively provide for the safety of our city parks and everyone who uses them, we believe our park exclusion ordinance should be strengthened. With the pending opening of the new Windjammer Park and the anticipation of widespread use by residents and visitors, it's a good time to make these adjustments. This ordinance change would apply to all current and future city parks. After evaluating ordinances at other jurisdictions and discussing options, the suggestion is to adopt the proposed changes to our existing ordinance, Section 1, which includes exclusion for 60 days for the first offense instead of 7, and 180 for the second offense instead of the current 90 from any or all city parks, instead of just a single park. The current ordinance, section number 4, also details a process for hearing to have the exclusion rescinded or shortened, should the offender choose to challenge the notice, but only if the length is longer than a 7-day period of time. This needs to be changed to allow for a hearing process for any exclusion of any length. So that's the background and summary. The recommended action is approval of the recommended change to 6.12.130, sections 1 and 4 regarding park exclusion.
Thank you, Chief. Let's open this up to the public, see if we've got anybody that would like to come and speak. Looks like we do. Christine Cribb.
Christine Cribb. I would just like to share that Thursday night, those of you that attended the trespass and safety meeting, to hear Chief Dresker speak about his plan, I would just like to ask you to completely support his vision and mission, and thank you for organizing the group to take a strong, hard look at this. It's really important to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Other comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll ask the chief to come back. City Council. I think we've, yes, Councilor Heisen.
Thank you. I just want to quickly summarize for those of you that are here or watching at home that haven't actually seen the packet. Our current ordinance allows the police to basically ban someone from a park for 7 days if they're committing some kind of an offense in the park. So from that park. So that doesn't stop them from going to the park across the street and then, continuing to whatever. So, in order to discourage any kind of disruptive or illegal behavior, now it gives the police a little more authority, 60 days instead of 7, and any or all parks. So they can use some discretion in terms of whether it's that park or all the parks, and if someone if it's a weapon or a felony, then it's a year.
365 days, that's correct.
Automatically, and currently that was 30 days in the old ordinance. The old ordinance was just very weak, so it's one of those opportunities for us to update something that's very much outdated and not really applicable anymore. So I want to thank Chief Dresker for being forward-thinking and looking at those housekeeping items in ways that we can not just strengthen our ability to protect our citizens in our parks, but not just maintaining the status quo. And that's something that you've consistently done since you've come on board. So thank you. And I think that this is a really good start, and we'll see how it goes.
Thank you, Councilor Heisen. Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt Ordinance 1878, amending the OHMC City Parks Ordinance as presented.
Second.
So we've got a motion by Councilor Larson and a second by Councilor Wiesner, as the recommended action reads in our packet, to adopt Ordinance 1878. No other questions or input? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to item number 7C, Resolution 19-15, Master Fee Schedule Amendment, Parks, Finance, and Police Department. We have our City Attorney, Nikki Esparza. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. So we've had a couple of amendments to our master fee schedule this year. This one, I believe, is the third. Resolution 1915 proposes to amend Schedule B to add back in the daily carnival rate. For some reason, that was inadvertently excluded in one of the previous resolutions. It also proposes to amend Schedule B and Schedule E to decrease the watch fee. That is driven by State Patrol. The decreased amount will be $11 moving forward in July. Schedule F, Public Works, is going to be amended to include the new windjammer facilities that we have. A group met a month or two ago and came up with recommendations for the 3 kitchens and the pavilion. So the new schedule adds in those. Schedule F also is being amended to delete camping fees, as those are unnecessary at this point due to stay sale closing. So it's a pretty straightforward amendment. If you have any questions, I will be happy to take them.
Okay, thank you. We'll see if the public has any input or questions. Okay, seeing none, we'll invite Nikki Esparza back up and to the council. Any input or? Yes, Councilor Olmberg.
Nikki, I'm going to support this.
Oh, thank you. That's that.
She had a look on her face like, oh, where's this going now?
Can you blame me?
Pardon? Did you want to read that? Sure, and I'll make the motion too. Okay. Make the motion to approve resolution 19-15, amending the master fee schedule.
Second.
Okay, so we've got a motion as it reads in the packet to approve Resolution 1915. Motion by Councilor Olmberg, second by Mayor Pro Tem Munns. Seeing any other questions or input? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously also. Wow, we are just cruising tonight, aren't we? 37 minutes and we are down to, oh no, we have 2 items left. Well, that does conclude Section 7, Ordinances and Resolutions, and we will go on to Section number 8, Sleeper Road Property Real Estate Purchase and Sale Contract. And Nikki Esparza, you've got that one too.
Yes, sir. I will make this quick, as I do not believe that this large crowd is interested in hearing about Sleeper Road. So on February 5th, City Council, after a public hearing, authorized the sale of the Sleeper Road property. In March, the legal department sent out a letter outlining the procedures that we would be using to sell the property. And we sent that to all of the real estate agents in Oak Harbor, and we sent it to the groups that had expressed interest in the property by directly contacting us. So we sent it to PBY, we sent it to Joel Douglas, we sent it to Miles Sand and Gravel and Urban Properties. After we listed it, we had interest from multiple other organizations, and we ended up sending out that information to a number of groups. And we also sent out geotech reports and the like to multiple interested parties. At the end of April, we received a sealed bid from PBY, and we received a sealed bid from Miles Sand and Gravel. We opened those sealed offers on April 30th, and the low offer was $352,000 with an escalation clause up to $400,000. The high offer was from Miles Sand and Gravel for a total of $651,000 in cash at closing. I sent a purchase and sale agreement to Miles Sand and Gravel, and they have returned that. It is in your packet, as you can see. And now we are ready to proceed with closing this particular transaction. If you have any questions, I am happy to take them.
Okay, let's see if the public has any input or questions before we take it to council. Okay, seeing none. Back to City Council. Yes, Councilor Olmberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Depending on the action that the council takes on this, I have a motion following the action by the council regarding this property. And I'd like to reserve that space, please. Thank you.
Councilor Heisen.
I move to authorize the mayor to sign the real estate purchase and sale contract with Miles Sand and Gravel Company for the purchase of the Sleeper Road properties in the amount of $651,000.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. The motion reads exactly like it is in your packet. To authorize the mayor to sign the real estate contract. Motion by Councilor Heisen, second by Mayor Pro Tem Munns. Any other input or questions? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you. Nikki Esparza and Mr. Olmberg.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a motion, and a copy of my written motion is given to the clerk. And my motion is as follows. I move that all proceeds from the sale of the Sleeper Road property be placed in a restricted fund and can only be used for the sole benefit of a future park capital project or projects and associated facilities. The use of such funds for and/or projects shall be approved by the majority vote of the council.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And the motion, you want to have Mr. Olmberg read that again, or
The clerk has a copy of it there.
clerk has a copy? So,
May I speak to it? Discussion?
yes, go ahead.
Thank you. My motive for doing this is so that there's a significant amount of money that came off of this property. That was a standing asset. In fact, when we did the timber harvest on it, it was $230-some thousand, something to that effect. And part of that money was used for soil assessments and other issues. I'm not going to say that there is a tendency that excess funds or funds, new funds, get frittered away. That's not at all what this is about. What this is about is to having funds set aside to really follow through on projects, as we have recently made an effort to purchase additional park space, and quite possibly for baseball tournament fields, et cetera, like that. So the only way we can put that money aside is to restrict this fund so that it is used for improving the parks with capital projects and the facilities that go to support them.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. Is Patricia Soul, our finance director, here tonight?
I believe she is. Although I'm not. What's that? Yes, she is.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, is this gonna jeopardize something? I mean, we're gonna be losing Fort Nugent or a good portion of it when the school district builds a school. We're trying to also acquire land to be able to have a regional park. I mean, we're shorthanded right now for fields for the kids or even adults to use it for different things. Do you foresee any problem with putting this into a restricted fund?
It says at council's direction, of course, but it is helping with a long-range plan for developing and purchasing parkland. It would be money that we weren't counting on, so it's not in the current budget. So it's up to council if they would like to restrict it. I would prefer it be restricted cash within the general fund versus a whole separate fund, is all I would like to ensure.
And that would be for accounting, it would still be like a line item?
It'd be a line item, but it would be a restricted line item that would require a council vote to utilize.
Okay.
Let's go back to Mr. Olmberg at this point. Did you? I'm sorry.
I support that too. You know, whatever makes it easy on the accounting side, the goal is to restrict it for specific use. And I really don't care which line it's in, as long as it's identified and that it's the council's prerogative to authorize the expenditure of those funds. I don't want to see it just disappear because we're getting rid of an asset that's been sitting out there for a lot of years. And we're trying to really improve the park facilities for our youth and for our general community too.
I just have a question for Nikki. Would it require a resolution?
It would be the cleanest to have a resolution.
Councilor Servadius.
Thank you. I wanted to hear this, and I'd like it read one more time, and maybe the solution is to, I think probably everyone here supports it. I won't make that assumption. But I wholeheartedly agree. I don't want to see the funds just slip through the cracks. We've got two major projects, whether it's the completion of the center of Windjammer Park, Phase 2, or the Harbor Heights land acquisition and everything that goes with that. Those are going to take some serious capital investments to get those projects completed. So I support this. I seconded it. I want to hear the discussion. I'm glad you brought it up. We might need some language, either a few words amended or a resolution, if that's a slicker way to go at our next meeting.
Yeah, we'll take this motion as direction to create a resolution if needed.
Still a motion on the table. You have to vote it down.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Some clarification, Ms. Attorney. So do we need to vote this down or vote for it and then have the resolution come? I'm a little confused on the legality of how to do it properly.
So you could affirm the motion, and then we could pass a resolution that reflects what your motion, reflects the motion, or you could vote it down, and we understand that that's what you would like to do, and we will bring forward a resolution restricting those funds and putting all the nice language in regarding, where those funds will be restricted.
Councilor Servadius.
Sorry, I didn't want to talk a second time, but I would just like all my peers to weigh in if we do happen to vote this down. It's very clear the instruction that staff's going to get, so.
Councilor Heisen.
I'm all about long-range planning, so thank you, Rick. I think this is a fabulous suggestion. So, yes, I support this, which means I will vote against it, so that staff can bring forward a formal resolution with all of the appropriate language. Correct? Okay. Make sure I have that right.
Councilor Omberg.
Come on. We can vote for it. They get the message. It's locked in once we vote for it. Then it comes back to us in the form of resolution. So we're there.
Call for question.
Call for the question.
Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Mrs. Sparza, I correctly understood you that if we affirm the motion, that the motion would then be taken as direction to create a resolution. Is that not correct?
However we do this, I would prefer that there be a resolution spelling out exactly where the funds are going to be restricted and how they're going to be treated, because that's a document that exists in code publishing, and it's there so the public can see it. It's not just a verbal motion. So either way, we'd bring forward a resolution.
Would we be better off with seeing Mr. Allenberg was willing to amend his motion to request a resolution stating such, and then the direction would be clear from?
If that's council's prerogative, if that's how if you'd like to do a friendly amendment to his motion, then, but that is getting a little convoluted, maybe.
Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The way I understand it, if we vote for this, they're going to come back with a resolution that is going to clearly delineate how we would like to protect these funds. And I would rather vote for or against something tonight. So I'm going to vote for this, trusting that our attorney and our administrator and our finance folks will understand what we want, and they're going to bring us a proper resolution at our next meeting. Thank you.
Councilor Servadius.
Thank you. Just one last comment. Do you, Patricia, any reason, I was trying to wordsmith, change a couple of those to put in the language you said for restricted cash in the general fund.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was to reread this, if you don't see any issues with drawing up a resolution and you can make that correction with the language that it's just a line item in the general fund rather than a separate fund that we're setting up
Yes.
inside of our budget. Because right now this says a
Separate fund.
restricted fund. So we're
Yeah.
basically instructing staff to set up another fund in our budget. That's the only clarification I'm looking at. Otherwise, I wholeheartedly support it.
Call for the question.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second motion by Councilor Owenberg, second by Councilor Servadius. Does anybody want that read again? No other input or questions. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
So what do we have here? 4-2? 4 ayes? 2 nays? The
Can't be
motion
unanimous
passes.
all the time.
Okay.
Oh, one question.
Yes.
If this becomes a baseball field, would you name first base after me?
So it's clear as mud, right? No, we will be back with a resolution soon, okay? We'll move on to our last item this evening, which is OHPD jail contract and staff reorganization. We have Chief Dresker back with us. Chief?
Mayor, council members, thank you. So, trying a Prezi presentation. We'll see how that works. If it doesn't work, we'll go to a PowerPoint. Prezi is just a fancy PowerPoint for young people. I'm not sure how I got into it, so in any case. What I want to do before I go through this, though, is I'm going to read you the recommended action, just so you have that out front. So what we're seeking here today is to approve recommended changes, which we'll go through in the presentation, which include authorizing the mayor to sign a contract with the Yakima County Corrections Facility, authorizing the conversion of 2 corrections officers' positions into police officer positions with accompanying salary and benefit change, which would be maintaining still 39 FTEs for Oak Harbor Police Department, so the same number of FTEs. And then authorizing one of the current officer positions to be changed to a sergeant position in January of 2020 or afterwards at the chief's discretion, along with the accompanying salary and benefit change. Do you know if I can use this to go through that? Good question, right? Okay, well, let's take a shot at it here. So this is, obviously that's a little older picture. I'm going to run through this. If it does it, there you go. So that's just a picture of our department, our mission statement. Looks like the formats might get a little goofy here, but we'll give it a shot. So running through this, new park, what increased staffing can do for us is establish routine foot patrols into downtown business areas and parks. Staffing to establish this as a duty station. One of my goals would be, if I had the staffing, we've already talked with Public Works. We've got an office space that we can use down there in the new wastewater treatment plant. And what I'd ideally like to do is staff more often than not somebody working out of that office to work what I call this downtown, historic downtown area, parks, and then a business area over towards the west end of town. Better staffing for special events and daily activity, more proactive community engagement in parks and downtown, increased visibility of officers, subsequent deterrence of inappropriate activity, and reduced overtime expenditures. So currently we're doing those patrols. It's on overtime for the most part right now. Evolving needs, population and area growth, square miles, demographic changes, community and social service needs, and aligned time spent on calls for service all contribute to increased time commitments for officers. Reduce crime, improved ability to be proactive rather than reactive whenever possible in our efforts to reduce crime and hold those who commit crimes accountable. Flexibility, improved ability to adapt and provide efforts to prevent or respond to needs outside of routine calls for service, such as vehicle prowl, traffic, or burglary emphasis details. These are just some examples. Staffing level is more appropriate for our goals and commitment, and it brings OHPD closer to the state average for officers based on population levels. So this is something to be proud of, and I know because of some visible things that occur once in a while, sometimes there's some questioning on this, but I've seen the statistics. I've come from other communities, and this is very applicable. So we were rated, and it's been for the last couple of years at least. I think it was 3 and then 2 or something similar to that as the safest cities in Washington. That's based on NIBRS data, which is data that goes to the FBI. And then we were rated, was it 8th, I think, overall for state military towns as far as being safe for the staff that work on the military base. With hard work and support, we want to remain on these lists for years to come, and of course, this will remain true regardless of structure or staffing decisions. Whatever decisions you make today, doesn't matter. We're still going to be striving for this. That's our job. That's our commitment to the community. Professional collaboration, one thing I've sought to do, as probably chiefs before me have, increase our ability to work and collaborate with others. CPS, Human Services, FBI. Top right there, we have a detective that goes to Child Exploitation Task Force meetings in Everett. SMART, which is a investigative unit with Skagit County for critical incidents that occur that happen to have a police officer involved when those occur. Public Works, Chamber of Commerce, downtown associations, etc. It's vital for OHPD to collaborate and work with LE and other partners to improve knowledge, skills, and abilities. It's accomplished by training, participation in task forces, an embedded mental health program, which I don't know if I mentioned it later, but Island County Community Health, or Human Services, I'm sorry, has a mental health worker who is working 20 hours a week with Oak Harbor police officers and 20 hours a week with Island County police officers. The intent is to go out and be proactive and reach out to people in need who have mental health problems, no matter what their status, although there is an at-risk population, and try to help them provide assistance, or at least offer that assistance. So that's in its infancy. I've had it for a month, a little over a month, I think. Community outreach, we still have an Explorers program. We do Coffee with a Cop. We started last year. Bowl for Kids, Big Brothers and Big Sisters. We've had several of our officers partner up with children at schools as a big brother or big sister, and other things, other tasks. Okay, so let's go to restructuring for current and future needs. So at the direction of council, OHPD has spent 9 months exploring several options to contract out jail services. Due to a variety of reasons, we cannot close our jail at this time. However, we can contract long-term inmates with Yakima and keep short-term inmates here. Additionally, we could convert 2 jail staff to police officers at a minimal cost increase. So I did bring the old proposal from way back when. You folks have all been part of that, so you're all well aware of it. We've discussed this since at least September, October of last year. We've attempted 5 other permeations of this, 5 other different attempts at ways we could look at doing this, not due to anything from our side, but just due to a lot of other factors. Those didn't work out. We're down to the final piece for the current term. So this is it. This is where we ended up. I wish I had ended up here back in October of last year, but I didn't, so we're here now. So what do I want to do, or what do we want to do? We want to enter a contract with Yakima to house longer-term Oak Harbor inmates. The Oak Harbor jail will continue, but in a more limited manner based on reduced inmates. So theoretically, 1 to 7 days will be the inmates that we'll keep here. The others we would send to Yakima. But that's flexible a little bit to us based on a lot of different circumstances. As you know, our jail was built in 1954, and this reduces wear and tear on it. It puts us into a classification, or into what would have been a classification, into a lot shorter term time period. Misdemeanor inmates will be booked in the Oak Harbor Jail, participate in a hearing, video hearing the next morning. Short-term inmates could remain here, long-term would go to Yakima. So I don't know that I have it in here, maybe I do. Let's keep reading. Oak Harbor will terminate our contract with Department of Corrections. We currently have that contract. Income from them is very minimal, and it's a large staff resource. I think they booked 100 people with us last year, and I don't remember what the days are, but that's quite a bit. Oak Harbor PD would like to convert 2 jail positions to 2 police officer positions and use our animal control officer to assist the jail on vacation, sick leave, or other needs. However, his full-time job, normal full-time job, would still be animal control duties. With reduced jail staff, police officers will also need to be able to assist at times with certain tasks like transport, 2-person inmate movements, court pickups, etc. So this transition will be a big change for our department and the city, and we think we know what's going to happen, but there's always potential unanticipated. We do know right now that our officers at times cover for our jail staff already. We think we'll have a little more commitment to that, at least initially. The structure should allow us to continue with our jail for another 3 to 5 years, or as necessary, and put 2 additional officers for a total of 28 commissioned police officers. We currently have authorized strength of 26. We'll put 28 officers on the streets to address community safety concerns and assist in the jail as needed due to the reduced jail staff, and promote 1 sergeant for our Special Services Division, SSD, or unit, which would be sufficient for OHPD for 7 to 10 years. So just be clear on that as I look forward with what I can predict or attempt to predict or look at. And with growth of the city, I believe adding these 2 officers would be sufficient numbers for us. I wouldn't anticipate we'd come back and ask you for additional officers for that a period of time. Now, I don't know if I left it in here or not. That's assuming there's not a catalyst that happens. You know, the Navy brings in, 7 other bases, or, there's something else. We expand out, south quite a bit and put, something out there. So based on what I know of our current growth, I think that would be sufficient. OHPD has been operating with 26 officers for the past 7 years. We had 29 in 2008. Even with increased commitments, we will improve our ability to address community safety needs with these 2 additional officers at a relatively low budget cost. That's cut off. Oh, wait, there it was. It disappeared. So much for fancy new stuff. I'm back to PowerPoints after this. Okay, why now, mid-budget? I just want to address this because there's been some talk about it. This is not new. I'm not asking mid-budget, although we're 5 months in. This is something that we've been working on September, October. This is where we end up due to circumstances not of our own making, where we finally come to a resolution where we can deal with this. So we've had individual meetings, we have council meetings, I've even addressed the Island County Commission meeting. When we initially talked about this back in September, October, we were looking at potentially being able to close our jail completely. We were looking at contracting with someone else. We were going to keep 3 of our 7 correction staff positions as police support positions for doing transports and other assorted functions, and convert positions to three police officers at that time, with the intent of trying to stay as close to cost neutral at that time based on all the discussions we were having, which was conversions of the jail, conversions of the 3 additional police officers. At the time, we were discussing WAIF. The school committed through some negotiations we had with them back before September to pay for part of an SRO's cost of 50%. So back then, with all that structure that I had going, we were looking at plus or minus 20,000, trying to keep it cost neutral. Now we're in a little different structure now, as we'll talk. So our workings at restructuring to be more efficient and apply resources to addressing community safety has not changed. It has, through unexpected circumstances, delayed us. However, again, all council members, city, pretty much everybody in the city, certainly directors, were aware we're working on this. Through this up here, I won't read everything, you can, but essentially what this just shows is our numbers in 2016, 2017, and 2018 of inmates that would have been booked here, not including Department of Correction, not including felonies, and not including other agencies' prisoners that temporarily reside here, and not including what we call book and releases. People who are just brought in, processed, and then released. So as you can see by the numbers, number of inmates is on the right, number of days they served is on the left of each column. And you can see we've had transition, but the numbers have basically decreased. I think I'm missing the very bottom number, which shows, I think, a 22% decrease from 2016 to 2018. It'll flash up for a second when everybody's done reading. Okay, catch it real quick here. There it is. Did you see it? It's in your packets, I believe. All you folks have that available.
22.53.
What is it?
22.53.
Okay.
You're good.
So this, I want to make sure that you understand that this slide has been altered from your packet. And there's like 2 others. Now, part of my passion for trying to make sure everything gets done is sometimes in my own mind and within my own understanding, things make sense, but sometimes they don't. So other department heads and people have tried to help me make sure I impart the correct message, that there's not an illusion of something else happening out there. And we'll get to that when I go to the next slide. But here's what we've got. The data and calculations I've made indicate changes I'm recommending, which include reductions changes to the jail and the ACO, animal control, to the animal control budgets based on our new structure and operational needs. Changes to salary benefits for the jail and ACO budgets based on current and anticipated staff requirements, budget allowance for sending long-term inmates to Yakima, promoting 1 senior step officer to beginning step sergeant, converting 2 jail positions to 2 police officer positions, maintaining our current 39 FTEs, adding a small amount for training and equipment for the modified structure, all these changes taking place as hiring processes and other factors allow. Now, just to make sure you're aware, I think we've talked about this starting in July. For me to hire an entry-level police officer, I have to identify that person, we have to do a testing process, I have to do interviews, we have to offer a job after a background check, and then they have to accept a job if they're the one we want, they have to give notice, and then we have to find an open academy date for them. Right now, I think we're into September or October for the first open academy date, something like that. And then they have to do 5.5 months of basic police academy. And then they come back here and they work with us for 2.5 months, riding with another officer before they're put out on their own. So it's quite the process. I still want in July to still have this, if this is approved, that's where I want this to theoretically be able to start. The only reason for that is because if I were to identify a lateral entry or a lateral officer, meaning somebody who's already got the training from another city who wants to transfer over to Oak Harbor, I could bring them on a lot sooner. I don't have to send them that 5.5 month academy. All I've got to do is put them through 1 month to 2.5 months of FTO here. So I want that ability if I can identify somebody. So if we go up here and look, if we remember that I was hoping to remain cost neutral, as we discussed this in October of 2018, we would have been close to neutral if we could have completed the jail transition then and included the savings from our animal control and our fleet, as discussed at that time, which amounted to approximately $116,000. Also remember the school district started sharing costs of an officer in September of 2018, which will amount to around $68,000 for a 1 year period, which is a school year. The timing of this carrying over into 2019 shouldn't make us forget that that was part of the equation and conversation. However, those savings trimmed from the budget in 2018, that fleet and that ACO that fleet and that ACO money we trimmed from the 2019-2020 budget that took place at the end of the year is just gone. And I don't mean it's gone, it's been accounted for as in the budget already. So that's already been incorporated into our entire budget for the city. So I'm just reminding you that that was part of that conversation then, but it's already been incorporated. So this is the budget document that Patricia worked up, and it's a little hard to see, but essentially to do the changes, which includes $113,400 reserved to send inmates to Yakima, and to convert 2 jail staff to 2 police officer staff, this year would be about 56,000. $56,400 or something like that. You folks, oh, there it is. 55,460 under budget this year because of those savings, because we're starting like in the mid-year. And this is just based on these calculations. Next year, the increase would be $116,784 approximately over my currently allotted budget for 2020. So if we were to move forward with this, in 2020, we'd have to allocate $116,784 if we want to move forward with this. Now, if you take those 2 years out, it's about a $61,000 increase, but I think we just need to keep in mind $116,784 to make all these changes. Now, it's simple. I could say, well, that's going to the jail contract, which is $113,400. Or I could say it's going to police officers because they cost more than our jail staff because they get paid a higher rate. You know, I've trimmed some money from our jail thing. It's really, I think we need to look at this as a combined package because it's a little bit of everything. And then if you look on your sheet, if you look down to increased budget, on that line, you'll see she's taken it out through 2025. And so it's 116,000 more than my current budget in 2020. And then in 2021, of course, we'll be discussing budget in 2020, right? So in 2021, it would mean an increase of theoretically 120,000, 123,000 in 2022, 127 in 2023, 131 in 2024, 135 in 2025. That's because she's thrown in a 3% increase for staff, assuming, it could be less, could be more, but that's just an average amount. And then she's got a compounded effect down there on the bottom, which just looks at what we're already looking at for our over amount for those years for the budget anyways, and adds in the potential for these 2 positions to be converted. Is that accurate? Okay. So I put that on the bottom. I'm going to make sure that it's understood what the amounts are there. And you've had time to look at it, and I can answer questions here either now or I can continue through and then come back to it. Would you be okay if I continue through and then we'll come back? All right. So I won't spend much time on this because I think I've already talked about it. If I could have done all this in October and our current jail situation, we would have had, I was proposing converting 3 jail staff to police support officers and having 3 police officers at that time based on the figures that we could have done if we'd eliminated our jail. I can't do that now. I have to keep money in there for the jail. So with 2 police officers, that would have been a total of 6 FTs. With 2 police officers in the current proposal, I'm keeping 5 corrections, which is 7 FTs, which is still my allotted number of FTs. Last year I was hoping to reduce it by 1. This year I can't based on the jail. The costs, if we included the WAIF and the fleet, if we could have done all this in 2019, would have still been about cost neutral. The difference would have been I would have had 7 staff instead of 6 because I have 5 corrections and 2 police officers is what I'm asking for instead of 3 and 3. So staffing is always, you folks know what staffing and how the dollars go for that. And then I want to throw this out. As of 5/9, I talked with Lance Gibbon, and they've agreed to pay 60% instead of 50% for our SRO costs for the coming school year. And in fact, they want to enter into a 3-year contract. Now that is not signed yet. I've sent it off to them today. They've got to have a school board approve it. They could choose not to approve it. Based on our current situation, if they do that, it would be an additional $15,000 to the city, which if we were to make this change, I don't know if my terminology is right, I would say that could be applied towards this to help offset what that increase of 116,000 would be. So, as chief, I'm advising you that I believe these positions are needed in town. I believe converting these right now is the way to go with this modification. I think it helps us to be able to maintain, to be better prepared to encounter any unknowns that I don't know about with this change that we're making. And in addition to that, it helps us with, and I didn't include potential overtime savings. The problem is you add 2 police officers, you might have more overtime for them. I don't see it going to work that way because some of these overtime patrols I'm putting on the street right now, I would apply those positions to. Now I have to get those positions and have them trained and in effect before I can start doing all that. But if they're not made, mostly converting the officers, I believe our options are limited, but might mean remaining status quo. So having our jail run the way it was. Why we're entering new territory for our department and city, while we anticipate our needs to be met, I do believe these officers will potentially be called on to do more occasional assists for the jail staff as well as other policing duties. I believe we can more easily absorb this with these converted positions rather than waiting a couple years where that money's just gone, like last year's money is gone, and then trying to look at whether we need to add officers or not. We are below the average state, the state average. And I believe with the developing community needs, If they're not converted, they're, you know, I would expect that I would be coming back to you at the next budget cycle and asking for officers. And you'd have to make that decision at that point in time. Part of my job is to be as efficient as possible. I've attempted to do so and offer a very responsible way to apply more resources to community safety with the least amount of negative impact as possible. I really wish I'd have just went with this option in October. It would have been a lot easier discussion because that money would have been all discussed at one time. But I didn't. Then the only thing I added here was there was a request, or I wanted to update you with this. So this is a chart I showed you way back when we were looking at the other one. This is going back to 1994, and I went back and did research showing the population as best I could determine. You can go to 20 different sites for population, and they'll all give you a different population amount. You know, I tried to stick with one as I did the last few years. You'll see the number of commissioned officers there. It goes up from 25, 28, 30, 30, 26, 29, 27, 27, 26 we've had for the last period of time. If you go over two more columns, you'll see that there's grant funding. There used to be COP grants available that were pretty robust that would let you get officers that were partially or fully funded by grants. It's gone away for the most part. There's some of it out there that's very competitive. But you see, from my records I could find, 2001 was the last year we had those. So we went down in officers from 30 to 26. Then the city started building up again, 28, 29, and then we see 2008. Well, we all know what happened in 2008, right? Okay, that's when things took a big dive. So it went down, I don't know if it's through attrition or what, went to 27, now we're down at 26. Population hasn't increased dramatically, but it's continued to increase. Additionally, the duties and responsibilities and complexities of police work have increased. Trust me, I've been in this for 31 years, exponentially. Maybe not quite exponentially, but it's increased quite a bit. And different social dynamics they're always changing. I could not find 2018 data. It lags behind a little bit, but in 2016, the average police officers per thousand in Washington State was 1.46. 2017, 1.47. You can't really look at national statistics. It's 2.4. You know, that includes a lot of big cities and different areas. In Oak Harbor, in 2018, we had 26 officers for an average officers per thousand of 1.11. If we do go with the 28 police officers as part of this, lack of a better word, package, assuming our population is 23.5, and I think it might be a little lower than that. Anybody? That's what a couple sites told me. I think city data or something. I'm not sure where you get that from. But if it's based on that, if we go with 28, we're at 1.19. We're still not up to the state average. But as I discussed with you last time, you can't purely use that figure or that data. You have to look at a lot of dynamics. You know, a city, for lack of a better word, infested with gang activity needs more police officers than a city who has a bedroom community that never commits crime. So there's a lot of different things you have to look at, but that's a piece of data in there for you. I think I zoom back to that, and I'm open for questions, and Patricia, I think, is here to clarify if anybody has any.
Before we do that, Chief, we'll see if the public has any, those are here in attendance, have any questions or input. Don, could you come to the, please give us your name.
Hi, I'm Dr. Dawn Keith Medeiros. Do I need anything else? I live in the city of Oak Harbor. My question to the chief is there a big price difference in actually bringing somebody a lateral shift than actually bringing somebody through the academy? What's the big price difference for the city?
Okay, if I answer that?
Actually, I think, yeah, we generally have the council ask, but I think you just go right ahead.
So there's steps within the city. There's 6 steps for a police officer, and they start off and then they step up based on their steps. It's to give allowances and benefit for experience and all that. So we can bring a lateral officer in at a higher step. The advantage of bringing a lateral officer in, and police departments around the country, believe it or not, people don't want to be police officers as much as they used to. I don't know why. But we can bring somebody in at a higher step, which costs us more. The advantage of that is it saves us the $3,700 we have to pay for basic academy, and the salary we got to pay for them while they're gone for 5.5 months. So we try to do that when we can. It's just very hard to find. We want qualified, hardworking, dedicated, not somebody coming here to retire. or something like, or that has a problem somewhere else. So it's a real complex dance.
Any other public? Yes, Christine.
I would just like to ask you to support Chief. We need lots more bodies on the street, and his plan he's worked very, very hard on. And that's it. I think you should support him. Thank you.
Please give us your name and.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council, Chief. My name is Daniel Booker. I'm a resident of Oak Harbor. I also echo that sentiment. The Chief's worked tremendous at making sure our community is safe. This is a well thought out plan. The creativity put into this plan is amazing given the confines that he has to deal with as far as budget, as far as personnel, and all the other things that have to go along with it. I'd also like to recognize the Chief, just his leadership, keeping us safe, number 2 in a state, that's incredible. And in order for us to maintain that, yes, thank you. In order for us to maintain that, and maybe even reach number 1, right, we need more people. Our society is changing. We have more complex problems now than we did before. Our population's bound to go up at some point. We're going to need the numbers at some point anyway. So I encourage you to please adopt, implement his plan. Thanks, Chief.
Anyone else? Okay. Chief? Come back.
I just want to say I appreciate the comments, but just be clear, I'm very proud to be the chief for the men and women that work for the Oak Harbor Police Department, and what you're seeing is stuff that they've been developing long before I ever got here. So, good group of people.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I guess it's a question for our finance director. She's right there. I know the chief has been working and crunching numbers and doing this. Can we sustain this or not? How much of a stretch is it to do the whole plan? I know you look into the future more than just a year or two. And sometimes we don't realize the benefits, and I know you factored in that 3%.
So, first of all, you guys have the spreadsheet, right? Okay. So what it comes down to is $116,784 in 2020. That will grow with union negotiations or other increases to personnel or expenses. It won't stay flat. It will go up. I did a 3% because that was an average. It could be more, it could be less, but I tried to show that. We have projected for the end of 2020 to have $736,300 in budgeted fund balance. This will take a chunk of it out. With the credit for 19 that we're planning for, if it ends up being that much of a credit, and the increase, it will be $61,000 less than what we planned on. The issue is going into the 21-22 budget. Will we be able to maintain the same services through general fund? That'll depend on what happens through the next 2 years. But it is a strain on our general fund budget. The other part, though, is we have that excess stability fund that council, if they feel strongly, could potentially tap into. It's money that's sitting there, and that's on here also. I also want to talk about what we do have sitting in our funds. We have the stabilization fund, which is that 10% sitting in its own fund, $1,557,000. That's 10% of our revenues. We have unbudgeted reserve of $2.4 million, but that's for 2 months of expenses. It's a very conservative approach, which is good, in my opinion, but I'm also very conservative, so take that with a grain of salt. And then, as I said, the excess stability fund, there's $1,384,000 sitting there. So, but $720 is what we project to have in our fund balance at the end of 2020. All things coming in as we projected, which, as we all know, it could be really great and we could get more revenue and less expense, or it could go the opposite way.
Well, unfortunately, we've been through some lean times where each year we were losing and losing, and it was at least minus 18% in revenue. And as people left, we didn't have money to hire them back, and or raises for some groups, not all groups. So I want to be sure we stay fair. I mean, we need to support, but we can't jeopardize not being able to pay our bills or always having money to pay all the employees that we have hired right now. So I just kind of wanted to get a feeling for that. Thank you, and I have one more question, please. Chief, why is it important to elevate, to add another sergeant position? Could that wait till 2021 or 2022? I mean, I can see the first two, but I guess I didn't quite understand the change to add another sergeant.
So it comes down to a span of control issue, and it comes down to an average amount, you'll get different amounts, 1 per 5, 1 per 6 supervisors as far as with officers. So we could not add that sergeant and have the officers, but where the officers are going to be placed is in what's called the Special Services Division. So that division, did I include I don't know if I included, I don't think I did. That position would be, Special Services Division would have around 6 officers assigned to it. So we'd have somebody working narcotics, we'd have somebody working traffics, theoretically. We'd have our SRO assigned to that. We'd have 2 police officers assigned to that who are working, able to be working to the parks or helping patrol or working traffic or whatever function we want. So as they're in that unit, I could have them, say, report to the detective sergeant, but it becomes a span of control. The detective sergeant focuses on detectives, and that's where his focus needs to be, which is already, I moved 1 detective position already, so we have 3 of them in there. So we could do that. We'd just be stretched with our span of control for our supervisors. The reality is they'd probably report to the captain, and that's not really what that function is set up for. We want a sergeant, and I'm sorry, that sergeant would be the 6th. We want a sergeant out there working with the officers when possible, monitoring what they're doing, providing them the assistance and support that they need. Liability is a big piece. That sergeant is the one who is looking, they're all looking out for, but that sergeant's job is that piece of liability too. And then coming up with the creative ways of doing things, whether it's, we're unfortunately being hit with some vehicle prowls right now in our city for the last month or so. So, as we try to focus on that, if we put these people and work in vehicle prowls, the sergeant would be organizing and doing the leadership portion of that. It comes down to a leadership span of control issue.
Okay, I just wanted to know if there was any wiggle room to, putting this plan into place. Thank you very much. That's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilor Ellenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief Dressler, I heard you say that you could delay the sergeant to a later time in the year. And I understand why you want him, the way you explained it. When we first talked about this, we spent a lot of time on it, this was a net neutral proposal that included working with Island County Sheriff Department, which didn't work out, and certainly no fault of your own. Nevertheless, net neutral meant that we have an established budget, and the only time that we're supposed to change those budgets is at our budget amendment period at the end of the first year, and then we go to the second year where we create the new budget for the following 2 years. Now, I'm not a big fan of interim budget amendments for this reason. The police department comes to us with their special package outside of the sequence of reviewing the big picture. The fire department comes to us with requests, which they have done, outside of the sequence of the big budget picture. Public Works comes in with different things like that. And when we get down to budget, then these departments who have gone out there first have already cherry-picked the money that may be available to meet the priorities of the community. So I applaud you for the job that you do. You know that. We've had personal conversations about this. And I really understand that you want to put a person, two people, as I understand it, in that park down there, which I support that too. So why can't we wait a few months before we throw the sergeant in there so that we can get to our budget amendment period and include that in the package, not only with the police department, but fire and all the other departments? It doesn't seem to be mission critical to have the sergeant in there right now.
So if you're talking about the sergeant position, and I'm not, when is the budget amendment period? I don't know this year. Is that October, or are you talking about this year?
Yeah, this year. It starts in October.
Okay, so we could wait to do that. You'll have, so here's part of the reason. So as we had all these discussions, back in October, it included the reductions, the wage reductions that we identified to trim, right? So now we're here discussing this now. That's gone. I can't say you can use that. I'm saying remember it, but I can't say use that because it's gone. It's into our general budget. It's already factored in. If we wait till October and readdress the sergeant issue at that point in time, I think we're okay because we haven't gone through another budget cycle, so we won't forget that. We'll understand it. We'll know. You can look at the concepts. You'll have the same decision to make. I mean, you really will. You know,
But we will have saved some money in the meantime.
Well, I'm not promoting a sergeant until 2020. So
Okay.
the sergeant.
All right.
Yeah, the sergeant's position, I initially looked at doing it in July or when we're doing the rest of it, but based on where I know I can probably get my staffing, I don't think even if you approve this, I'm not going to get up to this full 28 staffing. I'm right now at 26. I've got 2 in the academy right now, one going June 4th. He's in there for 5 months. The next available academy date, unless I can get a lateral, which have been very difficult, the next academy date is, I think it's in September or something like that. So even if we approve this, we probably won't even see this kind of a money deduction from this year's budget anyways, and because I won't be able to identify and hire. So that's why I identified initially I wanted a sergeant this year. I put it off to January of 2020 or after. I've left it up to my discretion because that wouldn't have to happen until we saw our staffing come to fruition, if you understand.
Okay, I understand that. So then, a couple other quick questions here. You talked about having the AOC as a part-time jailer. Are they two different unions?
No, they're a non-commissioned, and we're fortunate because
So there's no conflict between union issues on that?
There's no conflict, and we've already been talking with the association.
Okay.
In fact, we're gonna work out some other details with
So
them.
then if we approve this tonight, then when would we have two officers in that park to monitor the park, move into the Public Works office down there?
If I can identify a lateral or 2 lateral officers and get them on board from the time that I do a background, the best case scenario, I'll give you the best case scenario and the more likely scenario. The best case scenario is
10 o'clock tonight?
Yeah, 10 o'clock tonight, I deputize you and you're gonna. June 1st, if this is approved, June 1st, we start advertising for 2 positions as police officers.
I thought we were moving the jailers.
No, not.
You're taking 2 jailers and
not
putting.
the actual bodies. We're talking the open slots.
Oh,
the
okay.
slots.
All right, all right.
The 2 people in the academy right now are 2 of our jailers that took up the opportunity.
Okay, all right.
So it's bodies, okay? So if we advertise June 1st, if we were lucky and we had laterals, we could maybe identify them by the end of June. We have to do backgrounds. We can maybe bring them on board by end of July, and then they're going to be in a 1 month or 2 month FTO process, which means August. So we've already committed. We're going to be doing overtime for patrols this summer. We know that. That's going to come out of my budget.
That's foot patrol, bike patrols in the park, et cetera?
Correct. The ones I really want these extra bodies for, or at least one of them, I'm going to do overtime this year because there's no way I can get these people up and running. Even if you authorize it, I can't get them up and running by the summer. As I get people funneling out of the academy, I'll have a few more bodies right now. But by next summer, they would be in place, theoretically. It really depends upon the hiring process and where you go. We've identified people and gone through backgrounds, and then something comes up and we say, okay, we can't continue to hire you. So it just depends upon that process. And that's why I moved the sergeant position to 2020, And I put January, it may be later. I've got to have the bodies that I need to have that leader for. If the bodies aren't out there, I don't need the leader right now.
Okay. Thank you very much. And as you know, I'm not running for re-election, so you won't have very many months for me to ask you questions.
No
Thank you,
problem.
Chief.
Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, in terms of budget cycles and department heads, quote unquote, cherry picking from the budget, there is a precedent for mid-cycle changes, and also that any budget expenses or approvals, that rests with us ultimately. That decision is the council's. So that's not something I'm concerned about. Nor am I hung up on the sergeant thing. The recommended action says 2020 or afterward at the chief's discretion. So ultimately, that will depend on when you can get staff in there, as you said. It seems pretty clear to me. I want to clarify the recommended action. We need 3 separate motions, correct? Okay. And the language in the packet is adequate in terms of authorizing the changes, because those are outlined in the rest of the packet. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that language was all that you needed. I wholeheartedly support this. I know it'll take a long time to get fully up and running, but it's long overdue. So thank you for your many, many months of trying to work out a solution. Appreciate it.
Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief Drusker, first off, I want to thank you for your transparency during this entire process, the amount of time you've put into it, and the amount of time we've spent discussing this and answering all of our questions throughout this. I think we've all been pretty heavily involved in these discussions with you, and you've been very clear in the fact that this is all in an effort to provide additional patrols, additional feet on the street, as well as provide a safer environment for both the officers and the inmates moving forward. So thanks again for that. I do have a follow-up question on the whole sergeant thing, and I don't know that I'm totally hung up on it either, but what would what is of the $116,764, how much of it is the sergeant position?
I can find my data here real quick. You got it?
12,821 in 2020.
Okay. So in the end, for roughly $100,000, you're going to get us 2 additional officers on the street. We're going to get a safer facility to hold our inmates in, and we're going to hopefully assist the area downtown with those foot patrols, as well as protect our new $8 million plus investment in Windjammer Park. Is that right?
So those are all lofty and yes, but let me make sure I do it with the admonishment that, we still have to do what we can do within the limits of the laws and rules and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that is our goal. We still have to work within the laws and all that kind of stuff. So, but yes, that's absolutely. I truly believe that having a presence in areas helps deter criminal activity. And that's why I'm putting a person in a park right now, and that's why we did it last year. It doesn't mean we're going to prevent everything, but it does mean we're making a better effort at it and better able to catch them if they create an issue.
I did want you to also, let's talk about the Yakima facility compared to our current facility as it pertains to mental health and those other type of issues and dealing with those.
Sure. So Yakima, we pay them a contract rate, which is based on a daily bed rate. So if I send 50 inmates there and they serve a total of 150 days, I'm paying for 150 days. So there's no mandatory or minimum. We can do what we want to do, basically. The 113,400 is what looks like it'll work when I looked at the statistics from the last 3 years and where our statistics are. Of course, some inmates will still stay in our facility. We arrest somebody on a domestic violence, like right now, it's a mandatory arrest. They have to have somewhere here to go. That was the whole book and hold process that I was trying to do with some others. So they'll be in our facility. And we may keep somebody here for 1 to 7. So Yakima, we pay a per day bed rate. We transport them over to Skagit, and a Yakima van picks them up. They do this throughout the state. They have, I think, 50, 60 contracts. They go up to Whatcom, they go to Marysville, they pick San Juan's up. So we transport them over there, they take custody of them, they transport them to Yakima, the person serves their time or serves their, whatever they're doing there. So Yakima, the advantage to that, of course, it's a bigger facility. They have, I think, 1,200 inmates, something like that. Captain Bailey and I went over and visited them. They have their older section of the jail, which is large, and they have a newer annex type of section, which they built a long time ago, anticipating a bunch of contracts. SCORE then built a facility down there, which took a lot of the west side contracts down to SCORE. SCORE charges a lot more. So our inmates theoretically are going to go to this annex. We visited that. It's a jail, but it's a newer one, and it's not a bad facility at all. And when they get there, they have recreational opportunities they don't have here. They have educational opportunities they don't necessarily have here. They have mental health in-house that works within the jail that can handle mental health issues. They have an in-house nurse, which we don't have, that can handle a lot of the medical needs. If there's an extraordinary medical need, something they can't handle in-house, then they contact us, and we either seek to get that person out on a medical furlough, or we pay the cost, the same as we do here. So they have all those abilities that we don't have. You know, it's a distance away, and it's a larger facility, but those are mostly the differences.
Well, certainly I'm going to support your request, and I was hinging on the sergeant deal, thinking that, you know, the October discussion, you know, for budget amendments would probably be the appropriate place for that discussion. But as you do add personnel, I also do understand you have to add the supervisors to deal with them, and rather than sticking our head in the sand about that, we probably need to understand that $12,000 is money that you're only going to spend if you feel in your discretionary wisdom that you need to oversee the staff that you've got working. So that's where I stand on that. Thank you.
Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, couple things. First, I wanted to say that since I've been involved with you for about a year and a half now, the one thing that I have been impressed by is your willingness and your ability to develop efficiencies, the willingness to look at what we're doing and continually look for ways to do it better, leaner, and cheaper. I've seen that with your approach to trying to get this jail issue resolved, with our animal control issues. I do not question your dedication to your fiduciary responsibility. I don't like to spend more money, but I understand when it's presented as well and balanced and openly as you've expressed it to us, that sometimes there's a need. Couple of things that I wanted to mention. Our police per capita has continually decreased, as you showed on that last slide there. Our population increases, our number of police haven't. That's simple math right there. And as was stated earlier by someone who took the mic, the issues that we are facing in our community are becoming more complex. Also, if you go back to your inmate decrease slide, you discussed how the total number of days served has decreased. But if you look from 2016 to 2017 and then to 18, the number of inmates, especially from 17 to 18, actually increased by 20%. So we went up from number of inmates from 253 to 304. So that's arrests and people that you're handling. So yeah, they're serving less time in the jail, but the number of people that you've got moving through there has certainly increased. Overtime is inefficient. It's paying 1.5 times the salary for the same amount of work. And with that being one of the tools in your toolbox, unfortunately, it's not one that's very efficient, and I'd like to see us limit that. These additional officers, these additional positions, it's in line and keeping with how you've developed efficiencies in the force, giving us some more flexibility. At the end of 2 years, if we're looking at about $61,000 difference, and then it's our job in a couple of years to look at the biennial budgets and see what we can afford then. But for right now, for the cost that we're looking at for what we're getting in return, from what I've seen, You run a lean, efficient, and professional force, and I'm going to support this. Thank you.
Councilor Servatius.
You applauding for me or for you?
No.
Chief,
wish.
yeah, thank you. I think I can say with solid confidence, I've spent more time in the police department, even in the jail, than any of my peers over the last 6 months, so.
In the jail?
In the jail. In the
You have the right to remain
jail.
silent
I
on
didn't
that.
say in a cell. So I'm very familiar with what you guys are doing over there, guys and gals, and I applaud. I mean, you're never going to be accused of sitting on your laurels, just satisfied with the status quo. A couple of questions, and then, the challenge I always have, and I do support you on this wholeheartedly, but I want to take a good hard look at these numbers so that all of my peers are aware when we start the budget cycle. Ideally for me, it would be at the end of this year to start gearing up for the next budget cycle. We always get pushed, and it's really not that far away. We start, in theory, we'd start in mid-2020, which is hardly a year away. I'd like to start it by the end of this year. A couple of questions. One of the things that jumped out at me on this, I'm looking at the graph with all the numbers. So in our packet, it's page 259. 116,000. If you say it quickly, sounds like no big deal. But what jumped out at me is the beginning fund balance. And so Patricia, maybe help me remind or tell me where we spent this money. At the beginning of 2019, we had a beginning fund balance of, I'm going to round these numbers, 2.3 million. It's down there in the kind of lower left section. If we implement this change at the end of 2020, so in 24 months, we'll have an ending balance of 619. That's not sustainable, that rate of decline. So where did all of that money go? I want to put these officers on the street, but I want to make sure we're paying for them in this next budget cycle and the following budget cycle. What do we need to do to make sure that happens?
If you choose to go forward with this plan, then it will impact the fund balance. And like you said, if we start looking at the 21-22 budget, we're going to have to make probably some difficult choices.
And so the difference we talked about, beginning fund balance, ending fund balance, reserves versus excess, and I'm glad the public's here because people think, I shouldn't say this, I hear comments that you guys as a city, you shouldn't sit on any cash. So we usually try and keep 2 months worth of reserves, which some of that is reflected here.
Yes.
And then over and above, so let's take that beginning fund balance of 2.3. How much of that is reserves versus what we might allocate as any excess to any of our public safety needs?
At the beginning of 2019, that was our budgeted fund balance. So that was our budgeted cash. In addition to that, we have 2.4 million sitting in unbudgeted reserve. That's funding that's sitting there for 2 months of emergency reserves. If something happened catastrophic and we needed to use that money, it's sitting
Okay.
there.
So we do have those reserves in addition to this.
Yes.
So I feel better about that. So if we go from, it's still pretty impressive. We went from 2.4 to 619, 2.4 million to 619,000. Doing what I do, I plan for a living, I watch investments. I'm just going to remind everyone, we're at a 10-year bull market. If you're not into bull versus bear, bull is up, bear is down. It's been a very good economic time, especially the last 3 to 5 years. Very solid. Let me rephrase that, because you cannot run statistics. When this turns, we're going to have some hard choices. And I don't know, what departments put that bill, but, it's going to be a difficult decision to make in the next budget cycle or two, I feel, because of the way economics roll. So that's on my mind. I want to put these people out there. I've been on the phone a lot with Chief or in person. I am very concerned about what's happening out there on the streets. And he's gotten more calls from me than he'll probably ever admit. And I wanted to say something too it's bugged me, and I heard it again today. And just stop me if this isn't public information. Just go stop. The confirming of misdemeanor warrants. I'm going to say something, and I won't throw any names in there, but one of the things I witnessed last fall in the jail when we're talking to folks is we pick a lot of people up. Our police officers pick a lot of people up. And it may be a misdemeanor warrant. And what is the definition of a misdemeanor warrant?
It's complex.
Or an
It's-
example.
It's misdemeanor crimes. It's that, the state has said these are misdemeanor crimes. So it's usually a lower level crime, theft, shoplifting under a certain amount of money, assault fourth degree, trespass, those types of things are misdemeanors. When they don't show up for a court appointment that they've been given a ticket for, or they've been let out of jail and given a court appointment later and they don't show up, a misdemeanor warrant is issued for them to get them back into the court system to theoretically to take care of that arrest.
And so when I hear people say, hey, why don't our, or maybe they're throwing some shade on our police department, and then I heard examples last fall, even up today, that there are other organizations out there that may not pick people up for misdemeanor warrants?
So I'll give you an example. Just today, we went out, because of some cleanup stuff we're doing, we went out to a city piece of property. We found 2 people on the property who were part of the mess that's going on in the property. And they both had misdemeanor warrants, male and a female. So we booked them in the Oak Harbor facility on those misdemeanor warrants. Now, just as a reminder, when we first started this jail thing, you, the council, made it pretty clear to me that we don't want to make a jail change that isn't allowing us to take care of the crime problems that we may or may not have. In other words, not to be able to book people if they need booking. There's alternatives to jail, but for some people, especially ones who get warrants. So a lot of the communities on the west side here, I came from Wenatchee. We booked everybody in Chelan County, and we just did that. But on the west side here, because of jail space and a lot of different factors, most agencies, or a lot of agencies, are not confirming on misdemeanor warrants. So the 2 people we found today, if we weren't confirming on those misdemeanor warrants, we just said, okay, go on your way and make sure you go to court. And of course, they won't. It's just a matter of someday confirming the warrant. So we've been very clear from you, or at least I have, which is we had one option potentially available to us on the jail thing, but it meant I couldn't really confirm my misdemeanor warrants. And I don't think that's good for our community. So I think these are the people out there still continuing to commit crimes, and somehow you got to get them in. So, it's unfortunate for some jurisdictions, some agencies, that just based on jail capacity and different things that they don't do that.
So it's actually...
It's not just in here, it's around the west side.
It's very much a compliment to our police force that they'll pick folks up, and if they call another jurisdiction and they don't, tell me if this is a correct statement, if they don't confirm that warrant, let's say they have a warrant in Arlington, and they don't confirm it, then we can't send them off, or...
Right, well, like the mail we got today had a misdemeanor warrant from Oak Harbor, and he had one from Everett, and he had one from Mount Vernon. Mount Vernon and Everett would not confirm their warrants. We confirmed ours. And again, it's a budget thing, and we've gone where we weren't able to confirm some warrants sometimes in our jail because of our capacity. Luckily, most of the time we can. And our goal is with this plan here is, if you haven't showed up for court and you're supposed to, you're probably going to go to Yakima until you get that court adjudication.
So thank you for that. I've witnessed that, and so in lay terms, it's, we're going to pick them up, and I appreciate you. I don't think the public realizes how much you guys are really out there and how much you're doing. And in any department, funding it is always the challenge. And so when I look at these, I ask these questions, and I want to support you. I just want to make sure, whether we do this tonight, what happens in 6 months when we crank up the budget process again, or 12 months, whatever that timeline is, hopefully 6 months. One last question on the overtime thing. Is that, especially in these summer months where we see some of these problems probably become more obvious, is it insurmountable? I mean, how much would we crank up? I know you've talked about, $5,000 or $6,000 a month in overtime that you need. So that's a lot less expensive than 116. Granted, it doesn't put...
It is. We could, there's multiple dynamics behind that, though. So for May, let's take May for an example. As I talked to my captains and I said, let's do overtime shifts. We got started a little late. You try to pick where you start. Winter months is not that bad, but we're spending about $3,500 in overtime to put officers out 2, sometimes 3 times a week. And then as we look into June and July and August, we're looking at probably putting out around $5,000 to $6,000 in overtime, depending upon where we're at. Here's the problem: more overtime I put out, the more that cost neutral thing decreases as far as we look at this. But it's important, and we've seen the effect. We've heard the comments, and our officers have been making great contact. So that kind of overtime you could continue to spend. The other dynamic behind this, though, is that's assuming the officers sign up for the overtime, because there is a burnout. And there is a burnout with specific types of duties, but there is a burnout. So, you know, we don't want that burnout. And just to be clear, I think my budget last year for overtime was somewhere around 100,000, something like that. I don't know. This is not going to eliminate overtime. What it hopefully will do is reduce some of that overtime costs because of these things. But we get overtime because of critical incidents, you know, crimes that occur, court costs, different things. But then this type of overtime, which is a discretionary thing, we can adjust.
Right. Thank you. And last question for Patricia. Patricia, how do we fund public safety? Where do we get the money?
Either general fund.
Where do we get it from? How do we just?
We fund it with property tax, sales tax, all that, gambling tax.
Not the sewer fees.
Not the sewer fees.
Okay.
We also get some DOJ money. We also get some grants. Like he said, he gets the SRO funding from the school. There's other areas. Yeah. So.
Okay. So always growth is the goal here. I don't, you know, or more robust sales economy or retail activity. I support you on this, Chief. I just want to be very clear that I'm as with any of these financial decisions, figuring out how we pay for it moving forward. And these numbers don't seem overly huge, but when I see that beginning fund balance dwindling away quickly, we got to get creative and figure it out.
And just as a side on that, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You know, I actually took more out of like medical and food, because as I tried to look at the numbers, is an 80% decrease that we keep in our jail. So I thought, you know, well, I'll try to look at 80% and then add a few thousand. So I took it down. You know, a lot of kudos to Patricia, who kept theoretically, or not literally, but slapping me and saying, no, you got to do this and this and this. So we kept more money in there. We may be able to trim more, we don't know, but we've kept a little bit more money in there, and she's kept me on track, sometimes to my frustration, with some of the dollars and cents on here. So she's definitely looking out for the better of the city here, and what the future will look like.
Councilor Omber?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, for the chief and for the audience, the tradition of the council, City of Oak Harbor councils, even way preceding our group, and mine goes back till 2007 when I first got in here. The councils have all been fiscally very conservative, and even if you go as recently as 2007, 2008, during that period, this city was able to make it through a very difficult time where other cities were actually filing for bankruptcy and really having some severe economic problems. And I'm really remiss in wanting to just say, well, if we have it, we spend it, because in my career, this goes back way before some of you, I think I've seen about 4 major downturns in the economy. And when those happen, it ripples right through not just people within the city who are paying the taxes, but within the city staff who have to execute and do the services for the community. So I'm going to support this, but also it's kind of a buyer beware that, as Councilmember Larson said, you know, this is 10 years, or might have been Joel. We've been on a 10-year roll, and we can't guarantee it's going to be for 5 more years or whatever it's going to be. But I would still rather maintain a very conservative attitude towards our funding within this city, and I think that you have been efficient with the police department, and I think the fire department does that. But also, we've been able to stay in tight budget cycles where we do the discussions and negotiation between the mayor and the staff and the council during those time periods. But thanks again for everything that you have done.
Mayor Pro Tem.
If there's no more discussion, I'd like to start the ball rolling. Any more discussion on this?
I have a quick question.
Nope. Go ahead.
Sorry, very
Councilor
quickly. Where do I join the Chief Dresker fan club? Is there like a manager of the fan club out there? Let me know.
Just-
Let me know.
And next month, I'm at the
Making him
bottom,
blush.
so.
Okay. We'll ignore
Okay,
you.
back to Mayor Pro Tem.
I move to authorize the mayor to sign a contract with the Yakima County Corrections Facility.
Second.
Okay, you got a motion and a second to authorize the mayor to sign a contract with the Yakima County Corrections Facility. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Councilor Allenberg. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Councilor Larson.
I make a motion that we authorize the conversion of 2 correction officer positions into 2 police officer positions with accompanying salary and benefit changes, maintaining 39 FTEs for OHPD as presented.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second that reads exactly like the recommended action number 2 to authorize the conversion of 2 correction officers, etc. Motion by Councilor Larson, second by Mayor Pro Tem. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Mayor Pro Tem.
I move we authorize one of the current officer positions to be changed to a sergeant position in January of 2020 or afterward at the chief's discretion, along with accompanying salary benefit change.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second that reads exactly like the recommended action number 3 to authorize one of the current officer positions, etc. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Councilor Wiesner. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. So, I must say, Chief, that you report to me, and you have been in my office probably more times than Mr. Servatius has been over there talking to you. And you have patiently gone back, and you have worked these numbers since the beginning of the year, or since, actually, since probably back to when you first started. And I appreciate your hard work. I appreciate what you've done with the department. I started this job in 2016. It is a different department, different city than when I started this job. But I can tell you that your patience, your devotion, your hard work, and the loyalty that you have in your department is very impressive. So thank you very much.
And thank you on behalf of the men and women of the department. Appreciate it.
Okay. So, Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. Before someone makes a motion to adjourn, I would just like to say that it is gratifying and encouraging to see all these seats filled tonight.
Absolutely.
There are so many nights where we look out there and to a sea of empty seats. It is a testament to your commitment to our city and our community that you took the time out of your evenings to be here tonight for these 2 hours, to let your voices be heard and to be a part of this process. So thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you for your attendance.
Any other
I
council?
move that we say goodbye.
Motion to say goodbye?
Second.
Adjourn, second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.